You know, the technology that's in your pocket or on your desk right now, it isn't just a neutral tool. It's a sculptor. And today, we're going to dig into how it's actively, right now, reshaping the very way we think and what that might mean for all of us.
But before we get into all that, let me just ask you a question. Seriously, take a second. What do you think is the single most important muscle in your body?
Yep, it's the one inside your skull. It's your brain. And the whole idea we're exploring here is that your brain works just like a muscle. It gets stronger when you exercise it, and it can get weaker. It can actually atrophy if you stop putting it to work.
Now, that might sound kind of obvious, right? But you've got to understand this is a revolutionary idea. For most of the last 100 years, science was completely dominated by the belief that the adult brain was basically set in stone, that once you grew up, it couldn't really change. We now know that is completely, fundamentally wrong.
It took almost an entire century to overturn that old dogma. You go back to the early 1900s, and the father of modern neuroscience himself declared that the adult brain was fixed, ended, immutable. That was it. It wasn't until the 1980s that a researcher named Michael Merzenich finally delivered the knockout proof that the brain is constantly, dynamically rewiring itself based on experience. This incredible ability is called neuroplasticity.
And this all boils down to a really brilliant, simple insight from Donald Hebb back in 1949. Neurons that fire together wire together. Think about what that means. Every time you have a thought, every time you solve a problem or learn a new skill, you are physically strengthening the electrical connections between your brain cells. Thinking is not some abstract, wispy thing. It is a literal act of physical construction.
And this reveals the brain's most fundamental law: use it or lose it. They did these landmark experiments where, if a monkey's finger was amputated, the part of the brain that was dedicated to it didn't just go dark. No way. It was completely taken over by the adjacent fingers. Or look at the incredible story Norman Doidge wrote about, a woman who was born with only half a brain, and her functions simply rewired themselves to use the available side. These aren't miracles. They're just demonstrations of a biological rule. The brain adapts to the demands you place on it.
So, okay, how does all this apply to our thinking muscle? Let's zero in on the specific part of the brain that acts as the conductor for all of our critical thought.
That conductor is the prefrontal cortex, or the PFC. You can think of it as the brain's executive center, the CEO in your head. It's responsible for all the heavy lifting, planning, judgment, logical reasoning, and, this is absolutely crucial, inhibiting our impulsive gut reactions. This is the physical home of critical thinking.
So how does this muscle get stronger? Well, it's this fascinating process called synaptic pruning. First, your brain goes through a phase where it just overproduces a massive, messy jungle of connections. Then, like a gardener, it comes in and starts trimming away the weak and unused pathways. What does that do? It makes the remaining active connections way faster and much more efficient. But here's the key. It is an activity-dependent process. The connections you use are the ones that survive and get stronger.
Okay, so what's the best workout for the PFC? What's the heaviest weight you can possibly lift? It's the cognitive struggle of overcoming your own biases. That moment when you stop and you question that intuitive gut feeling that's screaming at you. That is your PFC engaging in an effortful, difficult act. That struggle is the exercise.
And this is where the conversation gets a lot bigger than just our own personal cognitive fitness. This biological reality has profound, and I mean profound, consequences for society. Because a functioning democracy is entirely dependent on a citizenry full of strong, independent thinkers.
About a century ago, two thinkers laid out two completely different visions for our future. On one side, you had John Dewey, the optimist. He saw the public as a great community, fully capable of intelligent self-governance. But then there was Walter Lippmann, the realist. He saw a bewildered herd living in a simplified pseudo-environment who needed a class of experts to manufacture consent just to guide them. The really big question is, which of those paths are we actually on today?
Modern research reveals a really surprising truth. The number one reason people fall for misinformation, it isn't actually that they're hopelessly biased. It's because they're not thinking hard enough. It's a failure to engage in that effortful, analytical thought. The problem isn't so much motivated reasoning as it is a simple lack of reasoning.
And that raises the stakes to a terrifying level. The political theorist Hannah Arendt, after studying the rise of totalitarianism, came to a chilling conclusion.
The greatest evils weren't committed by diabolical monsters, but by terrifyingly normal people, bureaucrats, who had simply abdicated their ability to think critically. They were, in her famous words, thoughtless. The atrophy of thinking isn't just a political problem, it's a moral peril. Which brings us right to our doorstep, today. The argument is that the consumer AI we use every single day, the chatbots, the image generators, you name it, is a powerful new engine that encourages this exact kind of cognitive laziness. It's creating a kind of gilded cage of convenience.
Let's look at a perfect, real-world example of this, the GPS effect. The task is simple: navigate a complex city. So what do? We offload that task to our phone. The GPS automates all the spatial reasoning, the memory, the work, and the result? Well, studies now show that heavy GPS users have a weaker ability to form their own mental maps. We outsource the skill, and the underlying muscle atrophied. It's a perfect microcosm for what could be happening to our higher-order thinking skills. This really highlights the core distinction we have to start making. Is a piece of technology a tool for thought, or is it a shortcut around thought? A word processor is a tool. Yeah, it helps you write, but it doesn't do the thinking for you. A calculator, on the other hand, is mostly a shortcut. It just delivers the outcome, letting you skip the entire mental process.
So, this presents us with a fundamental choice. We are standing at a fork in the road, with two very, very different paths for how we integrate this powerful new technology into our lives and our minds.
On one path, there's this forgotten vision from Douglas Engelbart, way back in 1962. He called it intelligence augmentation. The idea was to use computers as a partner to amplify human intellect and help us solve incredibly complex problems. But on the other path is our current reality, a reality driven by an attention economy that profits from keeping us scrolling. That's intelligence automation, where we use computers to replace human intellect for the sake of convenience and engagement. And that leaves us with the final, crucial question that we all have to start asking ourselves. The next time you reach for that AI tool, are you using it to help you lift a heavier cognitive weight, or are you letting it lift the weight for you? Are you augmenting your mind, or are you automating it away?